Welcome to the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness, the podcast dedicated to helping physicians in Michigan turn their professional success into financial success while enjoying life along the way. And now, here are your hosts, Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physician's Guide to Financial Wellness. This is Andrew Mushbaugh, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, Trent DeBruin. And today we're going to talk through 5 questions to ask a financial advisor before you start working with them. And we promise we didn't cherry pick questions like, why would I work with you if I can work with MD Wealth Management?
Although that would make for an interesting question.
Yeah, and maybe for a slightly awkward conversation too. But joking aside, there's already enough financial jargon out there and confusion for how advisors are different or who the best fit for you would be. So we wanted to distill this down into 5 questions that can serve as a baseline to compare and ultimately find an advisor that's the best fit for you and your situation. So the questions we'll walk through and why they are important are, number 1, do you work with people like me? Number 2, how do you help people like me? Number 3, how are you compensated? Number 4, are you required to act as a fiduciary 100% of the time? And number 5, can you tell me about your education and background? And before we start to address the questions you should ask, ideally, before you start going through your questions, any advisor you talk with will hopefully start by first understanding your situation and what all you're looking for help with. We know this isn't always the case, which can make it feel like that's normal for an advisor to start talking about how they can help, but that shouldn't be the case. If you think about it like going to see a physician, you wouldn't expect them to start off discussing all the patients they've helped, where they went to med school, or why their approach is the best. Instead, it would start by focusing on you, which it should be no different when talking to an advisor. So with that in mind, and ideally after you've had a chance to share what you're looking for help with, the next step is trying to decide which advisor is best suited to help you, which a great starting point is going through the 5 questions that we laid out.
Yeah, and before we dive into it, it's worth mentioning that there isn't one advisor out there who's always going to be the best fit for every person. It tends to be a very personal relationship, and an advisor who really connects well with one person may not be the best fit for a different person with a different personality and a different life situation. So before I jump into the first question here, looking at the bigger picture, throughout your first call or meeting with an advisor, it's helpful to be thinking about whether you like and trust the person, whether you would enjoy interacting with them on an ongoing basis, and whether you feel confident that they can help address what you're looking for. And a big part of that is simply your comfort level with them from a personal standpoint. But the other part of trusting someone is knowing that they understand your unique situation and have helped other people in similar situations, which leads us to the first question you should ask of, do you work with people like me? And I should also add that these aren't verbatim questions, and some of them might come off as a little direct, but the idea here is to understand if the advisor has helped people in a similar situation as you with similar questions and challenges, whether that's making the transition into retirement, creating a student loan game plan, helping with college planning, pension decisions, or unique employee benefits, or really any of the other questions that are on your mind and are being faced by others in your situation. For example, if you're a physician earlier in your career, a common thing may be talking with your parents' advisor. And if they only work with people in retirement, they may not have an understanding of student loans. Or on the flip side, there may be an advisor who works with a younger client base and doesn't understand the questions in retirement around Medicare, Social Security, or creating a retirement income plan. Said differently, if you think about it like healthcare, you wouldn't go to a urologist if you needed knee surgery or a dermatologist if your baby had a fever. And the same is true with finding an advisor who understands your unique situation and has experience helping people address the same questions you have. Outside of the more general areas you might need help with, like when should I claim Social Security, what's the most tax-efficient way to withdraw from my investment accounts in retirement, or should I go for PSLF or refinance my student loans, the other benefit of this question is the more nuanced planning topics specific to you. For example, if you're a physician at the University of Michigan and you're talking with an advisor in New York, they may not be aware of how Michigan's 403B and 401A works, that you have access to a 457B, the split between VA and U of M income, or how to help you navigate Wolverine access to change your benefit elections. And this is true for any career or specialty, and it doesn't mean that one advisor is necessarily good or bad, but it's just impossible to fully know every unique benefit of all the various employers across the country. And if it's a competent advisor, they should be able to help you address these questions and ultimately get the information needed. But it'll likely end up being more work on your end with gathering data and relaying information, along with the potential that they may not know what they don't know. And generally speaking, if you choose to hire an advisor, it's usually because you have some combination of A, not having an interest in managing things yourself, B, not feeling confident managing things yourself, or C, not having the time to do it. In a perfect world, you'd have an advisor who understands your unique situation and can help you address questions you don't even know to ask with as little effort as possible spent on your part.
So are you saying people don't enjoy spending time with HR and looking through benefit elections and pay stubs?
Yeah, there may be 1 or 2 items higher on the list of things people would rather do, but it's hard to think of 3.
Yeah, it sounds about right.
So that's step one of getting a feel for whether an advisor has experience helping other people in a similar situation. And the next step is understanding how they help you and what services they provide.
Yeah, this next question is where you can dive a little deeper to understand exactly what the advisor would do for you. And this is an important part 2 follow-up question because there's a difference between having worked with someone similar to you and the way they worked with someone similar to you. And so the second question is, how do you work with people like me? And this is more of a change in the industry, but it's particularly relevant for those approaching or in retirement. Because 25 to 30 years ago, financial advisors were predominantly focused on helping manage investments, especially since people were previously required to go through an advisor to even buy a stock. However, over time as the industry has evolved and investing has become easier to implement and gain access to through mutual funds and ETFs, paying someone strictly for investment management advice has started to go away. For most people looking to hire a financial advisor, they aren't interested in someone just managing their investments, yet have an interest in reviewing tax planning opportunities, making decisions on their employer benefits, how much to save, when you can retire, whether you have adequate insurance or a proper estate plan in place, and questions like those. Ideally, you'd have someone that you could work with where they could be a one-stop shop and help you address the financial planning questions you have and create a plan for you and then invest your savings based on that plan. The purpose of this question is to understand what all the advisors will help you with. There are still a lot of advisors out there who only provide investment advice or say that they provide financial planning advice, but may not actually do much there. However, if you talk with several advisors, you'll likely be able to tell the difference in how they answer this question as to how much financial planning help they really provide. Since there's a big difference between running a retirement projection one time and how to be strategic with optimizing a retirement plan over time, factoring all the different pieces like Social Security, healthcare decisions, withdrawing in a tax-efficient manner, and planning around the required minimum distributions that you have to take once you're age 72. Having said that, if you can't tell a difference and it seems like one or two advisors are similar with how they can help, that's a good thing. And it means you may have two good options to choose from. And at a minimum, you'll be able to differentiate between the advisors that don't offer financial planning help or don't seem to go as deep as others. The other aspect of this is going back to saving you time. There's a difference between giving recommendations and having you implement everything on your own versus someone helping you with it every step of the way. For instance, does the advisor help log into your 401k and 403b plan to update the investment options, or do you have to do them by yourselves? Will they connect you with the CPA and pass along the relevant tax information, or do they just let you handle that? Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but if I was in your shoes and I was going to pay an advisor to help, I'd want them to understand my situation and handle as much of it as possible. However, in some cases, there are some DIY type people who either have the time or enjoy handling things themselves, and they instead just want someone to check their work or periodically check in. Some advisors work on an hourly basis, project basis, or an ongoing basis, so there's a whole range of options there.
Yeah, and that's a good transition into the third question, which is about understanding how the advisor is compensated. And like Andrew just mentioned, there are several different ways advisors work with their clients, which naturally leads to several different ways that advisors are compensated. And unfortunately, given the variety of fee structures in the industry and the confusing terminology used to describe them, there's no easy way to explain this, but I'll break it down in the most basic way I can. So starting from a high level, there are three compensation structures advisors have. The first is commissions. The second is fee only, which means strictly receiving a fee for advice. And the third is fee-based, which can be a combination of commission and fee for advice. So starting with commissions, this is intuitive to understand. The advisor is compensated based on you buying a product like an annuity or a life or disability insurance, or a commission or kickback from an investment you buy. For example, under this model, an advisor may be compensated or paid a commission for recommending that you use their company's own investment funds. And it's hard not to add our own bias in here, but this is our least favorite compensation structure because it can often lead to an advisor giving an advice or selling you a product or investment that's good for them, but may not be what's best for you. It often creates a conflict of interest where you aren't sure, for example, if you really need the type of life insurance they're selling or as much as they're recommending, or if they're simply trying to sell you as much as you'll buy, or if the investment they're recommending is really the best for you among all the different options available. On top of that, if you're looking for an advisor to help you over time with both managing the investments and the financial planning questions you have, in a commission model, they aren't always incentivized to help you ongoing once they've made their commission. Having said that, being paid on commission isn't inherently bad, since at some point in your life, you'll almost certainly need to purchase insurance, and someone will be getting a commission for that. It's more about being aware of potential conflicts of interest and understanding what you're going to an advisor or insurance agent for help with to make sure that aligns with how they're compensated. And the second fee structure is the fee-only model, which is where you simply pay a fee for advice. And this is the way our firm operates, and it means the advisor doesn't receive any commissions from selling products or any kickbacks from the investments they recommend, and instead is only compensated through the fee they charge for their service, and that fee is paid directly by the client. Within the fee-only or fee-for-service model, there are several different ways advisors can structure that fee. It could be an hourly or one-off project where you pay $250 an hour for a review or a certain amount of money to have someone put together a financial plan for you. Or it could be a set ongoing monthly, quarterly, or annual fee, such as $500 a month or $2,500 a quarter. Or other advisors have a fee that's tied to the percentage of investments they're managing, like 0.25% per quarter or 1% per year. Those are the most common examples of the compensation structures within the fee-only model, but they all have the same thing in common, which is that the fee, however it's structured, is the only way the advisor is compensated. Like I said, this is the model we operate under, and the reason we chose it is because it's the most transparent model with the fewest potential conflicts of interest. And you can have more confidence that you're getting objective advice and don't have to worry about being sold a product or investment that you may not need. And it also allows you to do a more black and white cost-benefit comparison, where the fee is X and the services you'll receive for that fee are Y. From there, you can decide whether it's worth it to you. Now, the last of the three models, fee-based, is a combination of both commission and fee-for-service. This is often the most confusing part because fee-based and fee-only sound very similar, but are actually much different. In a fee-based model, you may be paying for the ongoing advice through a percentage of the investments the advisor is managing or a flat monthly or quarterly fee, but the advisor may also be able to sell you a product or receive commissions on the investments they're recommending. So there's a lot more gray area under this model in terms of understanding exactly how much your advisor is being paid through the combination of the commissions, which are less visible, and the fee-for-service. In some instances, this could be a beneficial compensation structure because the advisor could also help you purchase life or disability insurance, but more often than not, it creates more conflicts of interest and questions about how objective the advice is, which is why we aren't fans of this model either. So overall, the main takeaway with this compensation question is to understand exactly how the advisor is paid so you can understand how their interests are aligned, and so you have another point of comparison across advisors, in addition to understanding what the advisors provide for their fee, which we covered in the last question. And one last thing worth noting here, if an advisor isn't able to clearly and concisely explain exactly how much they would be paid and how they would be paid by working with you, you might want to move on to another option.
Yeah, that's the annoying part of compensation structures because not all of them are transparent, so it's really hard to compare apples to apples when deciding which advisor is best for you. And the next question we'll touch on also involves some additional financial jargon, but it's really important to ask, which is, are you required to act as a fiduciary 100% of the time? And it seems like a higher percentage of people today have at least heard of the term fiduciary. And at its most basic level, a fiduciary is someone who has a legal obligation to always act in your best interest. Now, hearing that definition, especially when looking at an industry with confusing compensation models, it seems like acting in someone's best interest should be a standard starting point without even thinking twice. However, not everyone acts in a fiduciary capacity at all times or has that legal obligation to always act in your best interest. The other standard financial advisors can adhere to is called the suitability standard, which says the advisor just has to give recommendations that are suitable for your situation, even if it may not be in your best interest. In other words, let's say you're earlier in your career and have a young family where there's a need for life insurance. Well, under the suitability standard, they may sell you significantly more life insurance than you really need, or significantly more expensive life insurance, and still meet that standard that the recommendation was quote-unquote suitable for your situation. That's just one example, but the same could be true for someone approaching retirement. An advisor might realize you're nervous about the stock market and thus think it's suitable to put all of your money in an annuity where they'll get a handsome commission on the sale. That may be suitable, but is it really in your best interest to lock in permanently low long-term returns? In most cases, the answer is likely no. There's legislation out there that has been consistently brought up of making every advisor in the financial service industry be required to act in a fiduciary capacity. But as you can imagine, there are a lot of big insurance and financial service companies pushing back because that would be a large hit to their revenues if their advisors couldn't sell products where they felt it was suitable. One other thing to note here to make things a little more confusing is that advisors are more and more aware of people hearing the term fiduciary. So they may throw around that they work in a fiduciary capacity, but they don't always have to work in a fiduciary capacity. At this point, you may be a little confused because we are too on how that can be a thing or how it benefits the consumers. And that's why we recommend asking the question of if the advisor is required to act as a fiduciary 100% of the time. While it should be the standard, and we view this as table stakes, you should work with an advisor that has a legal obligation to work as a fiduciary 100% of the time and act in your best interest.
Yeah, I sometimes cringe when people come to us and we see some of the recommendations and advice they've been receiving from other advisors. And every single time it's from an advisor who wasn't a fiduciary and who had some type of commission or fee-based model.
Yeah, it's like clockwork.
Yeah. And the last question we'll touch on is around an overall sense of competence, education, and training the advisor's gone through. If you're going to work with an advisor and trust your life savings to them, outside of liking them and feeling comfortable with the fee, you want to make sure they're competent with the advice they're giving. So question number 5 is, can you tell me a little bit about your background, experience, and credentials? And at this point, we don't want to criticize the financial advisor industry too much, but the reality is the requirements to give financial advice have a very low bar. For a physician, you have to go to college, med school, pass a number of tests, and go through a rigorous on-the-job training program in residency before working as an attending. On the other hand, to call yourself a financial advisor, you just need to have a college degree and pass 1 or 2 tests that take a couple weeks to study for. So again, a very low bar. And based on your conversations and the questions the advisor asks you and how they answer the other 4 questions we shared, you should have a general sense of how confident you are that they can address your concerns and create a plan for you. But to take it a step further, it's helpful to at least directly ask about the advisor's education, experience, and credentials. Now, this isn't to say that you should choose the advisor with the most credentials or that education and credentials alone can help you decide who's more and less competent, but it's certainly another data point to see how committed they are to the profession and understanding the key areas of financial planning. And the most important advisor certification to look for is the CFP, which stands for Certified Financial Planner. And while this is considered the gold standard of credentials in the financial advisor industry, we view it as table stakes for any advisor who's going to give comprehensive advice around not just investing, but also all the other important financial planning areas. And the CFP requires you to take 6 graduate-level courses across the key financial planning areas: investing, tax planning, estate planning, risk management, and retirement planning, and also pass a final exam. And there's also a 2 to 3 year work experience requirement before you can officially use the designation. So when looking at advisors, you'll know the advisor with the CFP has at least a couple years of experience in the industry, along with having taken additional coursework and passed a comprehensive exam. And unfortunately, there's an alphabet soup of credentials that advisors can get to make it look like they should be more credible than another advisor who doesn't have the alphabet soup behind their name. But most of these credentials are for marketing purposes as opposed to actually being a useful gauge of an advisor's competence. But having said that, there are 2 other credentials that are beneficial and relevant and also have a rigorous process to attain them. And those are the CFA and the CPA. And a CFA is a chartered financial analyst and a CPA is a certified public accountant. The CFA is 100% focused on investing, and it consists of 3 levels of exams, and it can't be completed in less than 3 years. And among the 3 relevant credentials, the CFP, CFA, and CPA, it has one of the lowest pass rates. And given how important investing is to an overall financial plan, having an advisor with their CFA at least gives you confidence that he or she has a deeper understanding of investing and how the investment world operates. As for the last credential, the CPA, this is most relevant for someone who prepares your tax return, but it can also be beneficial for an advisor to have. Tax planning is one of the biggest areas where an advisor can add value, and having a CPA is an added bonus given the associated tax planning education it requires. Since most financial advisors don't also prepare tax returns, this isn't as common as a credential, but the idea here is that you want to make sure your advisor has a deep understanding of tax planning. And apart from the credentials, it's also helpful to know the background or experience of the advisor. It's very important to go through the education and training these credentials provide, but there's also the real-world application that's just as important. That's where you'll want to understand how long someone's been in the industry, along with where they've worked, to get a sense of their experience helping people like you. Now, it's worth noting that there are a lot of advisors with 20 plus years of quote-unquote experience, but there's a big difference between expertise and experience. I could play golf for 25 years and have 25 years of experience, but that doesn't mean I have more expertise than a 20-year-old professional golfer with half as much experience. So the punchline here is that this question allows you to get another point of comparison to ultimately help you make your decision.
That golf line really hits home for me. I'm really hoping we are better in 25 years than we are today.
Don't worry, I'm confident you'll break 100 at some point.
Sure hope so. I'm more optimistic about you in 25 years, though, seeing as you get a 90 the first time you golf this year.
Yeah, we'll see if that keeps up, since I'm not quite sure how many rounds I'll be able to get in now with the 4 kids.
Fair point. Well, hopefully that was a helpful discussion and gave you a framework for how to compare advisors and make an educated decision on the best fit for you. We know we went through a little more jargon than usual, and you may still be thinking the compensation and fiduciary aspects are clear as mud, but the main punchline is to find someone you like, trust, and has the competence to address your needs. So to give a quick recap of the 5 questions we went through, number 1 is, do you work with people like me? And ideally, you'll find an advisor who works with clients and people in a similar life transition like you. For instance, approaching retirement, starting a family, or finishing training to become an attending. Or an advisor who has an understanding of your profession or employer. Question number 2 is, how do you help people like me? And the goal here is to get a better understanding of the services they provide. Is it just investment advice, or do they provide financial planning? Will they help handhold throughout the process, or do they just give recommendations and you have to implement them? The third question is, how are you compensated? Which there are 3 main fee structures here. The first one is commission-based, second one is fee for service or fee only, and the third one is fee-based. Commission-based compensation means they are paid for products they sell you or get kickbacks on the investments they recommend. Fee-for-service, or fee-only, means they are only compensated through the one fee you pay, whether that's hourly, one-off, or an ongoing quarterly fee. And fee-based is a combination of commission and a fee-for-service model. And the goal here is to know how someone is compensated to understand any potential conflicts of interest. And question number 4 is, are you required to act as a fiduciary 100% of the time? And a fiduciary is an advisor who has a legal obligation to always act in your best interest, which is different than the suitability standard, where the recommendations only have to be suitable for you, but may not be in your best interest. And we think being a fiduciary is table stakes and would recommend against working with someone who doesn't work in a fiduciary capacity 100% of the time. And the last question is, can you tell me about your education and background? The most important and relevant certification here is the CFP degree, but the other 2 common and helpful certifications you can look at is having an advisor with a CFA or CPA. Well, thanks everyone for joining us on another episode of the show. If you want to check out the show notes, you can find them at mdwmllc.com/podcast. And as always, you're also welcome to email us at info@mdwmllc.com if you have any thoughts or questions to share. Take care, everyone, and we'll look forward to talking to you again soon.
Want even more ideas, tools, and resources on how to make smart financial decisions? Check out the resources section of MD Wealth Management's website at mdwmllc.com, where you'll find additional knowledge and insight from Michigan physicians, including a blog, ebook, and one-page guides. While there, you can also schedule a 15-minute conversation with Andrew and Trent to learn more about what it means to work with the firm and how they serve physicians. If you've enjoyed the content, please leave a review on iTunes and share with your friends and colleagues. Thanks so much for listening. Andrew Mushbaugh and Trent DeBruin are certified financial planners, principals, and co-founders of MD Wealth Management, a registered investment advisory firm in the state of Michigan. All opinions shared in the show are for general information and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future returns. Please consult with your legal advisor, your tax advisor, or your financial advisor before making any decisions.